The No-Ashhole Rule: Building a Civilized Workplace and Surviving One That Isn't, by Robert I. Sutton. Introduction. Let me take you back to a little Italian restaurant in San Francisco, a place called Little Joe's. It was one of those wonderful, chaotic spots where the customer sat at a long counter watching the chefs work their magic in an open kitchen. The head chef was a showman, singing, joking, and occasionally setting olive oil ablaze in a dramatic flourish that made everyone cheer. The staff wore t-shirts that read, "Rain or shine, there is always a line," and it was true. The place buzzed with warmth and good cheer. But one day, the atmosphere soured. A customer at the counter was being relentlessly rude. He made crude comments to the waitress, complained loudly about his food, and insulted anyone who dared to look at him sideways. He was a black hole of negativity, sucking the joy out of the room. The air grew tense. The laughter died down. Just as it seemed this one man would ruin the day for everyone, another customer stood up, walked over to him, and said in a clear, loud voice, "Excuse me. You are just an amazing person. I've been looking everywhere for someone like you. I love how you act. Can I get your name?" The rude man, caught off guard, looked flustered for a moment, then puffed up his chest, flattered by the attention. He gave his name. The other customer pulled out a small notepad, wrote it down, and said, "Thanks. I appreciate it. You see, I'm writing a book on assholes, and you are absolutely perfect for chapter 13. The entire restaurant erupted in laughter. The rude man's face turned bright red. He quickly shut his mouth, paid his bill, and slithered out the door, humiliated. The warmth flooded back into the room, and the waitress just beamed. That simple, brilliant moment captures the heart of a book that has sold over 500,000 copies and been translated into dozens of languages. It's a book written by a respected Stanford professor, Drive. Robert I. Sutton, who became an unlikely global authority on one of the most pervasive problems in modern life. The book is called The No-Ashhole Rule. And today, my friend, we are going to explore its profound, and often hilarious, wisdom. This isn't just about learning how to deal with difficult people. This is about understanding the hidden cost of incivility, the secret architecture of a great team, and how you can protect your own spirit in a world that can sometimes feel overrun with jerks. By the end of our time together, you won't just know how to spot an asshole, you'll understand how to build a world without them, starting with yourself. Book summary. So, let's start with the most important question. What exactly is an asshole? We all use the term, but in the professional world, what does it truly mean? The author, after years of research, gives us a very precise definition. It isn't just someone who annoys you or has a bad day. He offers two simple tests to identify a true, certified asshole. The first test is this: after an interaction with the person, does the target, the person on the receiving end, feel oppressed, humiliated, de-energized, or belittled? In short, do they feel worse about themselves? It's not about disagreement, it's about degradation. The author shares a painful personal story that illustrates this perfectly. Early in his career as a professor at Stanford, he was nervous and not a very good teacher. He worked hard at it, and by his third year, he won the department's Best Teacher Award, voted on by the students. He was overjoyed. But his happiness lasted only a few minutes. A jealous, more senior colleague ran up to him, gave him a big hug in front of everyone, and whispered in his ear, "Well, Bob, now that you have satisfied the babies here on campus, perhaps you can settle down and do some real work." In that single moment, she expertly stole every ounce of his joy and replaced it with anxiety. That is the first sign of an asshole at work. The second test is just as important. Does the person aim their venom at those who are less powerful? True character, Sutton argues, is revealed in how we treat those who can do little for us. He tells the story of Sir Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin, who was screening candidates for a reality TV show. For the first episode, Branson disguised himself as an elderly, arthritic taxi driver and picked up the contestants from the airport. He promptly kicked two of them off the show for how horribly they treated him when they thought he was just an old, irrelevant driver. They failed the test. They showed their true colors to someone they perceived as powerless. These two tests help us distinguish between someone just having a bad day, what the book calls a temporary asshole, and someone who is a certified asshole. Nearly all of us, if we're honest, have moments where we act like temporary assholes. We get stressed, we snap, we send an email we later regret. The author himself admits to doing this and having to apologize. But a certified asshole is different. They display a persistent pattern of destructive behavior, leaving a trail of demeaned and de-energized victims in their wake. The book gives us a dirty dozen of common asshole behaviors. Things like personal insults, sarcastic jokes used to deliver insults, treating people as if they're invisible, dirty looks, and those two-faced attacks where someone is sweet to your face but destructive behind your back. These are the tools of their trade. And the examples are everywhere. From Hollywood producer Scott Rudin, who reportedly burned through 250 personal assistants in 5 years, to Chainsaw Al Dunlap, a CEO so notorious for his verbal abuse that one executive described it as being like a dog barking at you for hours. Now, you might be thinking, so what? Some people are just jerks. Why does it matter so much? This brings us to one of the most powerful ideas in the book, the total cost of assholes, or TCA. This isn't just about hurt feelings. It's about a tangible, measurable drain on an organization's resources, energy, and success. The damage starts with the victims. Study after study shows that people with abusive supervisors are more likely to quit their jobs. And those who stay suffer from depression, anxiety, burnout, and a host of physical health problems. Their work suffers, their concentration plummets, and their commitment to the company vanishes. And here's a startling fact that explains why this damage is so profound. Research shows that a negative interaction has 5 times the emotional impact of a positive one. Think about that. It takes 5 acts of kindness, 5 compliments, 5 supportive gestures to balance out the harm of a single demeaning encounter. One asshole in a meeting can erase all the goodwill built up by a dozen civilized colleagues. But the damage doesn't stop with the direct target. It ripples outward, affecting what the book calls battered bystanders. Anyone who witnesses bullying, or even just hears about it, suffers. Studies found that witnesses experience increased stress and worry about becoming the next target. A wife wrote to the author describing how her husband, a senior executive, came home every night utterly defeated by his abusive CEO, and how the stress was poisoning their family life. This toxicity doesn't stay at the office, it leaks out and infects homes and relationships. And what about the organization itself? The costs are staggering. There's the obvious cost of turnover. Recruiting and training replacements is expensive. The book tells a story of one highly paid, but highly abusive, salesperson named Ethan. His company decided to calculate his annual TCA. They tallied the time managers spent dealing with his outbursts, the cost of HR interventions, the expense of recruiting a new assistant because no one would work with him, and his anger management classes. The total came to $160,000 for 1 year. And that figure doesn't even include the silent costs, the good ideas that were never shared for fear of ridicule, the collaborations that never happened, or the emotional toll on his colleagues. Fear corrodes everything it touches. In a fear-based organization, people don't focus on doing great work, they focus on covering their backsides. They avoid taking risks. They hide mistakes instead of learning from them. One study of nursing units found something fascinating. The units with the best leaders and coworker relationships reported the most errors. At first, researchers were baffled. But they soon realized that in those units, nurses felt psychologically safe enough to admit their mistakes, so the whole team could learn and improve. In the toxic units, nurses were terrified of being blamed, so mistakes were hidden, putting patients at risk. So, if assholes are so destructive, why do so many organizations tolerate them? The answer often comes down to a dangerous myth: the idea of the talented jerk or the brilliant bastard. The person who is so good at their job that their terrible behavior is seen as a necessary price to pay. This is where the book makes its most powerful stand. It argues that this is a false choice. The most successful, innovative, and civilized organizations don't see performance and decency as separate things. They understand that if you routinely demean others, you are, by definition, incompetent, no matter how brilliant your other skills may be. This leads us to the heart of the solution. How do you actually build a workplace that enforces the no asshole rule? It starts with making the rule public. And not with some bland corporate mission statement about respect. The book praises companies that are blunt about it. A Canadian production company had a motto: "Life is too short to work with asshole directors or producers." The software firm Success Factors has a core value: respect for the individual, no assholes. But talk is cheap. The rule only has power when it's backed by action, especially in hiring and firing. The most effective companies are ruthless about screening jerks out before they ever get in the door. The design firm IDEO, for example, puts candidates through an extensive interview process where they interact with people who would be above, below, and alongside them. They're looking for human qualities, for a sense of fit. They know that assholes tend to hire other assholes, a process called homosocial reproduction, so they involve a diverse group in the decision to stop that cycle before it starts. And what about the star performers who are also certified assholes? This is the toughest test of a company's commitment. The book tells the story of Men's Warehouse, which fired one of its most successful salespeople. Why? Because he stole customers from his colleagues, refused to work as part of a team, and created a toxic atmosphere. He was a superstar on paper, but he was destroying the store's culture. After they let him go, something remarkable happened. The total sales volume in the store increased by nearly 30%. The jerk wasn't a star who happened to be an asshole. His asshole behavior was actively suppressing the performance of everyone else. Enforcing the rule also means applying it to customers. The founder of Gold's Gym, Joe Gold, had a simple philosophy: no jerks allowed. Members pay on time, and if they give you any crap, throw them out. Southwest Airlines is famous for this. They've sent letters to abusive passengers telling them they are no longer welcome to fly on their airline. One of their executives personally walked an irate, screaming customer over to another airline's counter and bought him a ticket, explaining that Southwest employees don't deserve that kind of treatment. The message is clear: our people's dignity is not for sale. Now, one of the most fascinating parts of this journey takes us away from the office and into the wild, to a troop of baboons in Kenya. It's a story that reveals a profound truth about power, status, and civility. Researchers had been studying a group of baboons known as the Garbage Dump Troop because they got their food from a tourist lodge's garbage pit. In the early 1980s, the troop was run by the biggest, meanest, most aggressive alpha males. They bullied everyone, hoarding the best food for themselves and attacking lower status males and females. It was a classic, top-down, fear-based society. Then, a tragedy struck. Infected meat from the garbage pit caused an outbreak of tuberculosis, which killed off all the aggressive alpha males. The only males left were the nicer, less aggressive ones. And the culture of the troop transformed. The new leaders were far less aggressive. They didn't bully the weaker members. The baboons spent more time grooming each other, a sign of social bonding. Stress hormone levels in the lowest-ranking males dropped significantly. Most remarkably, This new, more peaceful culture persisted for decades. When new adolescent males from other, more aggressive troops tried to join, they quickly learned the local custom. We don't do things like that around here. The garbage dump troop had, by accident, created and enforced its own no asshole rule. The lesson from the baboons is powerful. The book argues that when the social distance, the gap in power, status, and perks, between the top and the bottom is vast, it brings out the worst in people. Power, as research shows, can corrupt. In one startling experiment, student groups of 3 were put in a room to discuss social issues. One person was randomly assigned to be the leader. After 30 minutes, a plate of 5 cookies was brought in. Who do you think was most likely to take a second cookie? The randomly assigned leader. Not only that, they were more likely to chew with their mouth open and leave crumbs everywhere. A tiny, meaningless sliver of power made them act like selfish, rude pigs. The leaders who build the most civilized and effective organizations understand this. They practice what the book calls the power-performance paradox. They acknowledge that a pecking order exists, but they do everything they can to minimize and downplay status differences. Think of James Sinegal, the CEO of Costco. In 2003, his salary was about 10 times what his top hourly employees earned, a tiny fraction of the 500-to-1 ratio seen at other large corporations. He visits hundreds of stores a year, not to intimidate, but to listen. He's reducing the distance. He's behaving like one of the new, civilized baboon leaders. The result? Costco has incredibly low employee turnover and one of the lowest rates of theft in the retail industry. But what if you're not the CEO? What if you can't change the culture? What if you're trapped in a place where assholes reign? This is where the book becomes a survival guide. It offers powerful strategies for protecting your sanity when you can't just walk away. The key is to find ways to reframe your situation and seize small bits of control. The book shares the story of an executive named Ruth who found herself in a nasty political battle with a group of colleagues who constantly belittled and undermined her. The first time it happened, she fought back and was crushed, leaving her emotionally and physically exhausted. Years later, when the same dynamic started again with the same people, she remembered a lesson from a river rafting guide. The guide had told her that if you fall into dangerous rapids, don't fight the current. Instead, lie on your back, put your feet out in front of you, and let your life vest keep you afloat. Use your feet to push off the rocks, protecting your head and conserving your energy until you reach a calm stretch of water. In the middle of a toxic meeting, as the attacks began, Ruth stretched her feet out under the table and visualized herself floating through the rapids. She told herself, "I just got thrown out of the boat by these assholes. I know how to survive." Instead of feeling like a victim, she felt strong. She chose not to engage, not to absorb their venom. She focused on bouncing off the boulders they threw at her and preserving her energy. She reframed the entire experience from one of victimization to one of strategic survival. This Satan's cesspool strategy allowed her to get through the ordeal with her confidence and spirit intact. This leads to a core survival tactic: developing indifference and emotional detachment. When you're in a demeaning environment, pouring your heart and soul into your work is a recipe for burnout and self-destruction. Sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is to stop caring so much. To just go through the motions, get the job done, and save your emotional energy for the parts of your life that truly matter. As the great poet Walt Whitman said, "Dismiss whatever insults your soul." Another key is to look for small wins. When you can't win the big war against a toxic culture, focus on the small battles you can win. Maybe it's finding a way to limit your exposure to a particular jerk. Schedule shorter meetings, or find rooms with no chairs. Studies show stand-up meetings are 34% shorter. Maybe it's finding a pocket of safety, a supportive colleague or a group of fellow victims who can offer emotional support. Even a brief, kind word from a customer can be a small win that helps you get through the day. These tiny victories give you a sense of control, which is essential for maintaining your well-being in a seemingly powerless situation. Now, after exploring how to build organizations free of assholes and how to survive them when you can't, the book turns the lens inward, asking the most uncomfortable question of all: what if the asshole is you? It's a tough question, because almost no one thinks they're a bully. A national survey found that while 37% of working Americans report being bullied, less than 0.5% admit to being a bully. We are all masters at justifying our own bad behavior. The book argues that nastiness is like a contagious disease, what it calls asshole poisoning. When you're surrounded by contempt and hostility, it's incredibly easy to catch it and start spreading it yourself. The author tells a story about joining a group of management gurus during the dot-com boom. The meetings were a pathetic game of one-upmanship, with the men interrupting each other, bragging, and jockeying for status. He found himself getting sucked into it, and his wife pointed out that he was coming home from these meetings acting like a pompous jerk. He had caught the disease. He quit the group. So how do we keep our inner jerk in check? The first step is self-awareness. The book includes a humorous but insightful self-test with questions like, do you feel surrounded by incompetent idiots? Do you secretly enjoy watching others suffer and squirm? And do people seem to stop having fun when you show up? It's a wake-up call, a chance to see ourselves as others might see us. A powerful antidote to asshole poisoning is to change the way we frame our world. Researchers found that if they told students they were playing the community game, the students were far more cooperative and honest. But if they told another group they were playing the exact same game but called it the Wall Street game, the students became far more competitive and ruthless. The name of the game changed how they played. We can apply this to our own lives. Do you frame your work as a cutthroat competition where you have to push others down to get ahead? Or do you frame it as a collaborative effort? Do you focus on what you lack? Or can you find contentment? The book includes a beautiful little poem by Kurt Vonnegut about his friend, the author Joseph Heller. They were at a party hosted by a billionaire, and Vonnegut asked Heller how it felt to know their host probably made more money in a day than Heller's famous novel Catch-22 had earned in its entire history. Heller replied, "I've got something he can never have. The knowledge that I've got enough." Adopting that frame, the knowledge that you have enough, is a powerful defense against the envy and arrogance that fuels so much bad behavior. Finally, the book tackles an uncomfortable truth. Are there virtues to being an asshole? It's a dangerous question, because it's the justification every destructive jerk uses to rationalize their behavior. The book reluctantly admits that, in the short term, acting like an asshole can sometimes be effective. Expressing anger can make you seem more powerful. Intimidation can vanquish rivals. And fear can be a potent, if damaging, motivator. Steve Jobs is the classic example, a man famous for his tantrums and brutal critiques, who also inspired incredible creativity and perfectionism. But the book argues that these are delusions of effectiveness. Most successful assholes succeed despite their behavior, not because of it. They are often blind to the true cost of their actions, the silent enemies they create, the good people they drive away, and the asshole taxes they pay when consultants and contractors charge them premium rates just to put up with them. They mistake their successful power grabs for successful leadership, not realizing that the skills needed for one are often the opposite of the skills needed for the other. In the end, the journey comes full circle, back to that restaurant in San Francisco. The message isn't just about efficiency or productivity. It's about a fundamental choice. Life, the author concludes, is too short to spend your days surrounded by people who demean and de-energize you. Building a civilized workplace isn't a soft, idealistic dream. It is a practical, moral, and ultimately, a more joyful way to live. Commentary. As we step back from the stories and the studies, what is the deepest lesson the no-ashole rule leaves us with? For me, it's the profound and clarifying idea that civility is not a luxury, it is a non-negotiable requirement for excellence. Robert Sutton takes what we all feel instinctively, that being around mean-spirited people is draining and destructive, and elevates it from a personal complaint to a strategic business principle. The book's true power lies in its refusal to accept the myth of the necessary evil. It challenges the deeply ingrained cultural belief that you have to be ruthless to be successful, that you have to break people down to build a great company. By providing concrete examples like Costco and Southwest Airlines, it proves that humanity and high performance are not opposing forces, they are deeply intertwined. An organization that protects its people's dignity isn't just a nicer place to work, it's a smarter, more resilient, and ultimately more successful place to work. But the most personal and perhaps most challenging takeaway is the call for self-reflection. It's easy to point fingers and label others. It is far harder, and far more valuable, to look in the mirror and ask, when have I been the asshole in the story? The book gently forces us to confront our own capacity for bad behavior, when we are stressed, when we feel powerless, or, most dangerously, when we gain power. It reminds us that building a better workplace, and a better world, starts with managing the little moments, the tone of an email, the choice to listen instead of interrupt, the decision to offer a kind word instead of a sharp critique. So, how can you start applying this wisdom today? Here are a few simple actions. First, for the next 24 hours, consciously apply Sutton's 2 tests to your own interactions. After you talk with someone, ask yourself, did I leave that person feeling energized or de-energized? Did I treat them with the same respect I would show my own boss? This simple audit can be incredibly revealing. Second, identify what the book calls your pockets of safety. Who are the people in your life? At work, at school, or at home? Who are energizers? The ones who make you feel respected and supported? Make a conscious effort to spend a little more time with them. The simple act of connecting with positive people can build a powerful buffer against the negativity you might encounter elsewhere. And third, the next time you find yourself in a frustrating situation with a difficult person, try Ruth's Satan's cesspool strategy. Don't engage. Don't absorb the venom. Mentally reframe the situation. See yourself as a survivor floating through temporary rapids, conserving your energy for calmer waters ahead. You may be surprised by how empowering a simple shift in perspective can be. That was a summary of the no-ashole rule by Robert I. Sutton. We've explored the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It can show you the layout, but it can't replace the experience of actually walking the trails, meeting the people, and breathing the air. The real power of this book is in the way its stories and simple truths settle in your mind long after you've finished reading. If any of these ideas have sparked something in you, I encourage you to pick up a copy. It's a quick, funny, and deeply humane read that might just change how you navigate your career and your life. The link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring the wisdom found in the world's most influential books, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It lets us know we're on the right track and ensures you won't miss our next deep dive into the billionaire's bookshelf. Let's keep learning and growing together.